Have you ever noticed that some guy isn't the most handsome, doesn't drive the nicest car, doesn't do anything special in bed, and yet a woman becomes completely obsessed with him? Meanwhile, there's another guy who does everything right, spends money, compliments her constantly, tries so hard, and she just goes cold. Why does that happen? If you're watching this right now, I need you to pay attention for the next few minutes, because this could completely change the way you show up in your relationships from here on out. I'm going to tell you 10 things, none of them sexual, that make a woman think about you all day long without even being able to explain why. And listen, before I keep going, type "here" in the comments if you're actually willing to see yourself honestly in this video. Because this only works if you're real with yourself while you're watching. I'm going to tell you something most people don't know about me. I've spent years studying behavior and relationship psychology, talking to hundreds of women, listening to their stories, noticing the patterns, and what I found completely broke everything I thought I knew about attraction. Most guys spend their whole lives trying to understand women by looking in the wrong place. You think it's about gifts, about your body, about visible effort, but it's not. What actually keeps a woman hooked is invisible. It's small behaviors, almost unnoticeable, that hit a part of her psychology she can't even fully control. And number 7 on this list, that one is the turning point. It's what separates the guy she likes from the guy she can't get out of her head. Hold on to that because I'm coming back to it. Let's get into it. The first thing is that he doesn't chase constantly. He leaves room to breathe. Let me tell you how this actually shows up in real life, because on paper it sounds simple, but in practice it's the opposite of what most guys do. Picture this. You had an amazing night together, a great conversation. She laughed for real. There was real chemistry between you two. The obvious move, the predictable move, is texting her first thing the next morning, then again at lunch, then again that night asking, "Hey, did you disappear on me?" That feels like interest on the surface, but the real effect is the opposite. She feels the weight of having to manage someone else's anxiety before she's even figured out what she wants for herself. Now picture the other version. The night was just as good. He sends something simple and warm the next day, no pressure behind it, and then he goes back to living his life. He works, he trains, he spends time with his friends, he handles his own things, he doesn't disappear, he's not playing games, but he's also not sitting there staring at his phone waiting for a reply. And it's in that healthy silence that her mind starts working on its own. She starts wondering, is he thinking about me right now? Why hasn't he asked again? That small gap, that space left without an immediate answer, is more powerful than any good morning text you could ever send. I've lived this myself, honestly. There was a man years ago who made a point of being available every single second, who never disappeared, who never created even the smallest distance. And I, even though I liked him at first, started cooling off without fully understanding why. It wasn't until later, once I started studying this, that I understood. When something is guaranteed, with zero effort involved, the brain simply stops assigning value to it. This comes from something called perceived scarcity. When something feels infinite, always available, always certain, the human brain automatically lowers the value it places on it. And understand this. It's not about playing hard to get. It's not about pretending you're not interested. It's about having a life so full, so occupied with things that actually matter to you, that you genuinely don't have the time to be available all day long, and she can feel that, without you saying a single word about it. The second thing, he listens to what she doesn't say. Let me tell you a quick story that captures this perfectly. A friend of mine was going through a heavy week at work, one of those weeks where everything just piles up. She got home. Her boyfriend asked how her day was, and she answered in a flat voice, "Fine, nothing special." On paper, that closed the subject, but her tone told a completely different story than her words did. And instead of just accepting that answer and going back to his phone, he stopped what he was doing, looked her right in the eyes, and said, "Your voice doesn't match what you just said. What actually happened today?" She told me later that it was right there, sitting on that couch, that she felt like she'd finally found someone who saw her in a way no one else ever had. It wasn't some big gesture. It was one sentence, maybe 10 seconds long, but it stayed with her. Here's how this plays out practically. When someone talks a little too fast, when their arms cross mid-sentence, when they suddenly change the subject, when their laugh sounds a little forced, all of that is language, even without a single word. And the man who trains his eye to notice those small details, who asks one more question instead of accepting the surface-level answer, communicates something rare. I'm not just here listening. I'm here actually paying attention to you. Have you ever noticed her tone before responding, or do you just answer whatever she literally said? Think about that in your next conversation, especially the short, rushed, everyday ones, because that's exactly where most guys let it slip right past them. Comment below if you've ever been through something similar. I really want to read your answers. The third thing, and this one is foundational, he has direction and purpose. A woman doesn't become obsessed with a man who's lost. She becomes obsessed with a man who has somewhere he's going. Let me give you a real example of this. I knew of a case where a woman dated a successful businessman for a while. Nice car, vacations, expensive dinners every week. But this man had absolutely no direction beyond the money itself. He couldn't tell you what he was building, had no hobbies, no personal growth, just lived on autopilot. A few months later, she ended it and started seeing someone completely different. A gym trainer, earning far less, but someone who woke up at 5 every morning, had goals written down, trained his own discipline like a muscle, talked about the future with actual light in his eyes. She told me herself, in a conversation, that she felt safer with the second man than she ever felt with all the money the first one had. This isn't about how much you make. It's about where you're headed. This taps into a very old part of the female brain, tied to survival and long-term security, not just immediate comfort. Historically, a man with direction represented future stability for a family, for the next generation. And that's still wired into psychology today, even if nobody talks about it openly over drinks with friends. If she asked you right now, this very moment, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? Would you have an answer ready, with detail, with clarity, or would you freeze up, stumble, change the subject? If you froze just now, even just thinking about it, that's your first thing to work on. And I mean that seriously, because it's something people can feel from a distance, in a conversation, in a look, in the way you treat your own time. The fourth thing, he teases her, but he never loses respect. Let me give you a real, practical example of what this looks like day to day. She gets dressed up, checks herself in the mirror, asks, "So, does this look good?" expecting a straightforward compliment. The man who's lost his spark just says, "You look pretty," and goes right back to autopilot. But the man who knows how to tease says something like, "You look so good right now, I'm going to have to keep an eye on everyone who walks by," with a little smile, half serious, half joking. That creates good tension, a warm kind of provocation, completely different from an empty compliment. That playful "stop being silly," dropped in the middle of a serious conversation. That light teasing when she's exaggerating a story. That's what creates the emotional tension that's the real fuel behind attraction. A man who's too serious all the time gets exhausting, because it feels like being in a job interview constantly. A man who only jokes and never shows any depth loses value, because it feels like nothing is ever taken seriously. The balance between the two is rare, and that's exactly why it's so magnetic. Honestly, the men who've left the biggest mark on me were never the funniest or the most serious. They were the ones who knew how to move between both at the right moment, who knew when to make a joke and when to go quiet and just listen. And that's not something you learn overnight. It's something you build through observation and self-awareness, paying close attention to how the other person responds. The fifth thing, he remembers the small details. This sounds simple, but it's one of the most mentioned things when I ask women what stuck with them most in a relationship. She mentioned, in passing, without even thinking twice about it, somewhere in the middle of a random conversation, that she likes a specific kind of flower, or that she can't stand raw onion in her food, or that she was scared of big dogs as a kid because of some incident. 3 weeks later, in a completely different conversation, with no obvious connection to that topic, he remembers, and brings it up naturally, without making a big deal out of it, something like, "I didn't put onion in it because I know you don't like it," or, "Hey, I saw a small dog today. I figured you'd like that size better." That communicates something incredibly powerful. I actually listen to you. I don't just hear you and forget 5 minutes later. And these days, with everyone glued to their phones, that's rare enough to become almost obsession-inducing. In a world where most people barely listen to their own partner, while scrolling through their feed mid-conversation, a man who actually pays attention, who holds on to the small stuff, becomes practically unforgettable, without ever making one grand gesture. Before we move to the sixth thing, I need you to hit subscribe right now, because every week I bring content just like this, straight to the point, no fluff, about what's actually going on inside a woman's mind. And drop a like too. It genuinely helps this video reach other men who need to hear exactly this. The sixth thing. He doesn't turn into a different person around his friends. So many women have lived through this, myself included, more than once. The man is warm, present, affectionate when it's just the two of you, in a good conversation, in a quiet moment together. But put him in front of his friends, at a barbecue, at a bar, in the group banter, and he becomes a completely different person, ignoring her in the middle of the circle, teasing her a little too hard just to get a laugh from the guys, disappearing from her attention entirely. And that quietly erodes trust, because she starts wondering, without ever saying it out loud, which version is the real one, the affectionate one from when you're alone, or the distant one from when other people are around. The man who stays consistent, the same warmth, the same care, in any setting, whether it's just the two of you, or in front of his friends, or in front of her family, communicates enormous security. She thinks, even without putting it into words for anyone, this one is real. This isn't a character that changes costume depending on the audience. And emotional security today is worth so much more than one grand gesture done a single time. The seventh thing, and this is the one I asked you to hold on to at the very beginning of this video. He stays calm when she tests him. Women test, often without even realizing they're doing it consciously. She might mention a guy friend in a way that stirs a little jealousy, take longer than usual to text back just to see how he reacts, make a slightly sharper comment on a hard day just to watch how he handles it. The man who loses his temper in those moments, who demands an explanation right away, who spirals and sends 5 anxious messages in a row, loses points instantly. But the man who stays calm, who responds with security, without spiraling, without panicking, without begging for attention, becomes practically unforgettable. Let me give you a real example of what this looks like. Imagine she takes 6 hours to respond to a text, for no obvious reason. The insecure man sends, "Why didn't you answer me?" or worse, goes quiet and sulks when she finally shows up. The secure man simply keeps living his life during those 6 hours. And when she does respond, he treats it with ease. No guilt trip, maybe even a light joke like, "Thought you'd been kidnapped or something." That, with zero drama attached, communicates more security than any speech ever could. Why does this happen? Because staying calm under pressure is one of the oldest signals of leadership in the entire history of human behavior, long before any modern relationship theory existed. A woman's brain associates this, instinctively and almost automatically, with protection and stability, with a man who can hold things steady even when the situation gets tense. I need to ask you something honestly right now. Do you react on impulse, or do you respond with control? Really think about that before answering, because that single answer might be shaping the entire course of your relationships up until this point, in a way you've maybe never stopped to notice. Comment calm below if you've ever noticed this in your own life. I really want to know. The eighth thing. He values her without needing validation in return. Complimenting someone is easy. Anyone can drop a "you look beautiful" mid-conversation. What's hard is complimenting someone without it feeling like you're begging for a reaction in return. Notice the difference between these two scenarios. The first man says, "You look beautiful today," and then waits, glancing sideways, hoping for a bigger smile, a more enthusiastic thank you, almost demanding a response that matches the size of the compliment he gave. The second man says the exact same words, "You look beautiful today," casually, and just keeps the conversation going, keeps living his life, without monitoring her reaction at all. The first communicates neediness, even without meaning to, even without realizing he's doing it. The second communicates abundance, communicates that the compliment came from a genuine place, not from a hidden need for approval. This sounds like a small detail, almost silly, but psychologically it makes an enormous difference because a woman can feel, almost instinctively, whether that compliment came from real generosity or from a need disguised as kindness. The ninth thing. He creates memories, not just moments. This has nothing to do with spending money. It never has. It's about creating a real experience, something that actually sticks. A little note hidden inside her bag, handwritten, with no special occasion attached. Just, I was thinking about you. A playlist put together slowly, song by song, each one chosen for a reason, a meaning, not just some random list thrown together in 5 minutes. Going back, sometime later, to a place that meant something to the two of you, the restaurant from your first date, the bench in the park where you had that one important conversation. That gets carved into her emotional memory in a way no expensive gift could ever come close to touching, because gifts get used up and forgotten. But a memory lasts, gets replayed in her mind years later, gets told to a friend with her eyes lighting up. When was the last time you actually created a real memory for her, instead of just going through the motions of a moment? Sit with that for a second. No rush to answer right away. And now we've arrived at the 10th thing, maybe the most important one of all. He makes it clear what he wants, without fear. An indecisive man, one who stays on the fence, who answers, "Let's just see how things go," when she asks what he actually feels, who's too afraid to take a stance because he's scared of getting hurt, creates anxiety, never attraction. I've watched entire relationships fall apart simply because neither person ever said, clearly, out loud, what they actually felt. And that uncertainty quietly ate away at everything, piece by piece, until there was nothing left standing. But the man who knows exactly what he feels and says it with clarity, no drama, no games, no vague half answers, something like, "I really like you, I want this with you, I'm all in," creates a sense of security that's almost tangible. A woman doesn't become obsessed with someone she constantly has to decode like some exhausting puzzle. She becomes obsessed with someone who's clear with his words, direct, no runaround, and who still manages to stay a little mysterious in his actions, always something new to discover. That combination, clarity in words and mystery in actions, is rare, and that's exactly why it works so deeply, so powerfully. Now I want you to be completely honest with me. Out of these 10, how many do you actually practice today, for real, in your everyday life, not just in theory? This isn't to impress anyone in the comments. This is for you to look in the mirror with honesty. Comment your number below right now, before you go watch anything else. I read every single comment, and I genuinely want to see your answers. If this video opened something up for you, hit that like button right now, because it helps this content reach other men who need to hear exactly what you just heard. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, do it now, because every single week I bring a new topic to help you understand the way a woman's mind really works, in a way nobody has ever had the courage to explain to you before. I want to leave you with one last thought. None of these 10 things require money. None of them require looks. None of them require some special talent only a few people are born with. All of them require just one thing, real presence and genuine self-awareness. And that's something any man willing to put in the effort can start building today, starting this very week, with just one attitude, one conversation, one small gesture. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be present, honest, and self-aware. That's what turns an ordinary man into one a woman simply can't forget. I'll see you in the next video.